Hi, Mark Renshaw here. Today I'm with one of the bikes that I've got in my collection from 2013. It is a Giant Propel. I was riding this bike with Team Belkin in the Professional World Tour.
Thanks for the intro, Mark. I've filmed it and we've had a little trip down memory lane basically. I recall the green because it was basically unveiled in Corsica and it was the most fantastic Grand Départ in the history of the Tour de France in my appraisal. And you didn't do it that year?
No, that in 2013 I managed to bite the dust pretty hard early on at Tour of Turkey, and that put me out for a few months. It wasn't until I came back after the Tour de France and started racing, which this shot here behind me is in the Enico Tour, where I managed to win the first stage with a late attack in the final kilometre. And this bike, it comes in as one of the nicer bikes that I really enjoyed riding. Looking back over the bike, obviously, we're still on rim brakes. We don't have disc brakes back in 2013. So the brakes really weren't up to a high standard with this bike here. You just hoped for the best when it came into the corners, and maybe that played a factor why I was able to dive away in the final kilometres on that bike. So really looking at it, the brakes were pretty woeful in fact, but the frame, the wheels, and I suppose the group set of the bike was something I really liked. Shimano Dura-Ace wheels. I rode C75s like this in some of the sprint races, just running quickly over the bike. Shimano Dura-Ace group set, Di2, lovely group set. The Physique Alliance seat, which I used a lot during my career. Really enjoyed this seat. It has quite comfortable. It suited me quite well. Something I could push back into and really get some good drive out of the seat. Shimano pedals. So really, all the favourite things that I used during my career are on this bike. Nice fast bike and still pretty stiff, and yeah, one of the better bikes in that year in the peloton.
They were fiddling around with the brake calipers for the sake of aerodynamics. As a bike rider, is there any reality in the fact that it felt more aero?
This was definitely a very aero bike. I can remember pretty clearly. I was on Team Rabobank. We didn't have the new Propel at that stage in 2012. So when this bike was released for 2013, it was a big difference. You could just see by how sleek the bike is that it was quite fast. And although the brakes didn't really pull you up too fast, it did make it a lot faster with the frame being integrated behind the fork here. So it was a big step back in those days.
We hear, like certainly around this time where there was a lot of experimentation, disc brakes weren't there. There was a whole lot of innovation going on. Did you have much input into what Giant did with their road bikes? I mean, that was, as you said, the Propel was a big unveiling, the new shape.
I didn't have really any input into the bike. Obviously, the only input that I have is how I set up my bike. Back at that stage, it was about being pretty long and low. I went for a conventional, I suppose, round handlebar, which is very, which you won't see in the peloton this day and age. So, the things like that is what I really enjoyed. I could be quite long and still quite low with a high position on the hood. So, that conventional round shape in a handlebar. Many handlebars these days are integrated, and you just don't have the options on what you can and can't use. So that was something I really enjoyed with that, the Pro Vibe stem and bars. I could pick and choose the length, the angle, and the depth of the handlebars.
Okay, we don't see any sprint shifters on there. Is that this bike in particular, or did you ride with sprint shifters? How did you play it?
No, my whole career I didn't get the mechanics to put on sprint shifters. I thought it was just something else to get your head around, and in the finish of sprint stages and races, it was about being good under pressure, and if I had to think about more things, I just didn't want those extra thoughts going through my head. With this bar, I was really lucky that just probably won't be able to see too much, but you know, here I could easily change gears just holding on just with the knuckle. So it's not even a movement of the finger, it's a very quick movement. For that reason, in the sprints I didn't worry about holding on top of the hoods. It was always down in the hood sprinting and a very quick movement. From the 13 to the 12 or the 12 to the 11, not often that you were going up the gears in a finish, so for me it was just as fast to use a knuckle and make the gear change.
The Belkin years was your kind of sprint for myself kind of era. It was a great experience. You won a couple of races.
I had a couple of good years. Probably the biggest win would have been in the Enico Tour when I took out the first stage. Had some other good results, but didn't really get the ones I wanted to, especially in the Tour de France and those kind of races. So looking back, it was a good opportunity because I stepped up, learned how to lead a sprint train as such. And that helped me further on in the career when, of course, I went back to work with Mark Cavendish. And look, I wanted that opportunity. I had good results, but you know, realistically, I never had that top end speed of a pure sprinter such as you know, Cavendish or Kittel and these kind of guys. So I was pretty happy with my time in Belkin.
We could easily get distracted, but we're going to talk about the bikes today. But thanks for a little overview of the product. You did reference the brakes.
The big points was that it was an aerodynamic frame with the brakes was the major points. I really loved the saddles. You know, Dura-Ace pedals, always done up to the maximum tension. Never want to pull your foot. So just little things like that I did to all my bikes was the pedals on maximum tension. I think we'll have a 54 on this bike. 53. So we hadn't really changed to 54 chain rings yet. You can even look, if you look at the rear cluster, just an 11 to you know, up to a 25. Even that's pretty much changed this day and age, where most of the guys in the peloton are, you know, we've got single chain rings now. We're running up to a 30 or bigger cassette on the rear. So head to the wheels. Continental tires, another brand that I really liked during my career. 25mm tire. This day and age, a little bit smaller than the average tyre in the peloton. We see a lot of people going to tubeless tyres in road racing. So, you know, these are singles. These were glued on by the mechanic at night in the evening. So, even now, this bike's still a lot of changes to the current bikes in the pro peloton. Yeah.
You've brought up tyres, so I'm going to hit you with it. It's a little obsession of mine in 2021. I'm riding tubeless. I'm actually down on, would you believe, 36 PSI on some 23mm inner rim Envy wheels. It's ridiculously comfortable, and for me it's fantastic ripping into corners. Are you in the low pressure fad or trend, or what's the feeling in a bike shop?
Look, if I was going to race right now, I'd still probably want singles because I like the feeling. My mountain bike's set up tubeless. We sell a hell of a lot of tubeless through the shop here. Some of the brands are really pushing and excelling in that. If I was going to turn pro again, I'd probably stick with the singles because I like the feeling of them. More so when your puncher going downhill, I know I've still got that tube stuck on the wheel. Mountain bikes tubeless. On the e-bikes, I have Tennis Armour in all my bikes with tubes. So there's a big difference in all my bikes, but it's all, I suppose it's changing so fast in the current climate with tubeless. And I'll probably, being honest with you, change my road bike, which is Cervelo S5 at the moment. I'll probably convert that to tubeless soon. The only reason I don't have it now is because Continental released their Tour de France tan wall tyre, which I thought looked beautiful. So I put that on the Cervelo, and it has to run tubes because it wasn't tubeless ready. Okay.
If you do go tubeless with the Cervelo, you would know about it based on your experience in the shop. What pressure are you going to run?
Look, much lower. I'm probably going to put a set of Continentals on. They're Grand Prix, tubeless ready. As far as pressures, you mentioned yourself, you can go quite low. During my career, I was always a believer in just having that had more pressure, even though a lot of the times Rolf Aldag tried to drum into me that sometimes less is more. So I'm looking forward to experiencing. I won't tell you exact number now because I don't know, but once I have some experience on these Bathurst roads and I suppose the rough and different to the big city roads out here, it'll be interesting to see how low we can still go down.
Super, man. Thanks very much for chatting about that bike.
No worries.